Hello all. Wow. So Friday, he was tired this morning, amazingly. I think 'cause he missed his nap yesterday, kind of fell asleep in the car late in the afternoon, but got woken up after 10 minutes. And he fell asleep in the car on the way home just then. So he was asleep before 12, which is, as anybody who's been watching these would know, is very unusual. So I hope he sleeps well, and hope he's okay. Seems fine otherwise. Today what I thought I kind of wanted to talk about was a little bit about this idea of cotton wooling our children and what my approach has been with Spency. So as always, it's not really a criticism of anybody's personal parenting choices, and obviously parenting is a very complex thing and there's a lot of factors that go into our decisions around it. But I did want to sort of speak a little bit about the principles I've been following, and look, none of this stuff is stuff that I've made up. It's kind of been floating around for a while now, and a lot of people have been advocating it. So my basic idea has always been with Spence. And he's young enough that most of his development up until now has been pretty much physical development. There's been some cognitive stuff, there's been some social stuff, but there's been lots of physical development. And my approach has always been to encourage him to take physical risks. And my checklist has always been, the question I've always asked myself is he likely to hurt himself, or is he likely to injure himself? And my approach has been that if he's likely to injure himself, that's probably not something I want him doing, or that I'm going to need to help him so he doesn't. But if the only risk is that he will hurt himself, that I'll leave him to it, with the expectation that he will, may well get hurt. And he gets hurt, has particularly gotten hurt when he was younger, especially when learning to walk, and when he was very keenly climbing up couches and stuff. He got hurt a lot. And it sounds a bit callous, but I'd always make sure I was there to cuddle him afterwards, and to soothe him as best as possible, and to let him make his own choices about what he wants to do. And I always figured that if it was painful enough, that he simply wouldn't do it anymore, and that if he kept doing it, it was because it actually wasn't that bad, that he was making the decision that it wasn't that bad. And that's worked really well for us, in that when he was learning to walk and stuff, he would run and he would fall down and he would run into the couch, and he would, beat himself up to some extent quite a lot, and there would be lots of tears. But never once did he get discouraged. Never once did he kind of go, ooh, this hurts too much, I'm not going to run around anymore. He would just keep doing it. There would be a bit of crying. Sometimes when he hurts himself pretty badly these days, if he bashes his head against, the wall or something while he's jumping around on the couch, he might need to have a little lie down in his cot so he can settle. But that's it. I'm there to cuddle him. I'm there to, reassure him that it's okay. And the thing I've noticed is that the vast majority of the time, more than 9 times out of 10, it isn't a big deal. Because the other part of that is I've made sure to check my responses. I noticed this actually today, coincidentally, that a child fell over in the playground, and it was gave himself a fairly good whack. And the parent responded with big, oh dear, you've really hurt yourself, even before the child started crying. So normally with Spence, when he whacks himself, I'll wait, and I'll check my own response to make sure I'm not saying or doing anything until he makes it clear whether he's been hurt or not. Because usually often there's a long pause where I'm waiting to see if he's going to burst into tears or not. It's fine if he does, that's absolutely appropriate response, and I'm there to support him in that. But a surprising number of times he'll whack himself and I'll think, oh my god, that's a big whack. And there'll be this long pause, and then he'll just continue playing. And so part of it has been to make sure that I don't overreact to things and teach him that he should be hurt or should be worried by stuff that isn't worrying him. And at the same time, reassuring him that it's okay when he does hurt himself, that it's okay to cry and he doesn't have to play. If he wants to stop playing, that's fine. And that's worked really well for us. Now, some of that will be temperamental, some of that will just be big expense. That'll be in his temperament. But some of it, I think, is that we, as a society, sometimes teach children that when they hurt themselves, that this is a really big deal. And I'm kind of trying not to. I'm trying to let him decide how big a deal each sort of incident will be. And I think I want to extend this to emotionally as well, is that, so when I've said no to him about stuff and he gets upset, is I let him be upset about that's okay, because it's like when you fall over and, and you hurt yourself and you need to cry. And I let him determine how bad that is. And we rarely, very, very rarely do we have incidents where something goes wrong while we're out, he hurts himself, or, he wants to do something he can't do, whatever. It's very rare that he will then have a meltdown and that'll be it, that we'll have to go home. The vast majority of the time he gets over it. And he gets over it by himself with my support. I cuddle him and everything. But I don't encourage him to get over it. I don't tell him, pick yourself up, keep playing, or, that wasn't such a bad thing. I let it be as bad as he wants it to be. And so far he hasn't, there's no worrying signs of him sort of trying to make things out to be worse than they really are. So I just wanted to say that sort of that's been my approach with the physical stuff, but also I guess with the emotional side of things, is to let him decide how bad a deal it is, and let him decide about, and I guess, to only insulate him from those situations where I think he might injure himself. That is, the kinds of things where he might end up in hospital equals bad, or may cut himself or bleed or whatever. Anything less than that, fall over, scrape his knee, in the playground, I've encouraged him to set his own boundaries, and so far that's worked really well. So I just wanted to share that. And again, it's not judgmental. I understand these are very complicated things, and this is as much about my own bias as anything else. So anyway, hope everybody else is having a good time, and I'll see you later. Bye.